Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a new round of innovation management. I hope you can all hear me okay and see me okay. Otherwise, just put something in the chat. Today, I thought what I'd like to do with you is a little quiz for a startup. There we go. Should be 26 people. That's so many who are in the lecture, so we'll wait for some more to join. Let's go. 8 questions. Are you ready? The triangle of project management has 3 objectives: cost, quality, and time. What other objectives are important? The right answer is scope and organization, so that was not covered by myself. Let's see who got that right. The fastest one was Schmiedl, and followed by Schneider, Dom, Jan, and Simon. All right, ready for the next question. Lean management involves making it ugly. Why? So the correct answer is problems are made widely visible. That is good. 17 of you got that correct. And Schmiedl is still at the top, running up Brian, Jan, Maxit, and again, Simon. All right. Next, mission statements. Correct is all of this answers. Mission statements define what a company does, who they do it for, and how they do it. They're usually a little longer than a vision statement, and they also define the present state and the medium-term future. All of these answers are correct. Only very few have this right. Are there any questions about this answer or this question and the answer? That is not the case. Then let's continue. The list is only slightly changed with Nick coming up here. So you were right answer. Could we have a bit more time to read the question? No. Vitor, I'm really sorry. Because I can change it, not because I don't let you. But the question is still readable. Okay, let's go ahead. Which of the following statements about portfolio management is not true? You should not invest in question marks. That is nonsense. Obviously, the question marks are the upcoming innovations, and you need to invest and find out if they have a future, obviously. But basically, first thing would be to invest. Any questions about the other answer? Cash cows are products with fading glory. A number of you have answered that. Well, the glory, they're shining. The peak of their triumph is already fading. They were at the peak of their success when they were stars. Now, as they become cash cows, they're merely the old products that are still shining. So we can still make a lot of money from them, but they are fading, so their shine is okay. Next question. Nick. Well, you have quite a headways, and you struck 3 correct answers in a row. Congratulations on this one. This is why you have 2,824 points. Pretty good. Next question. Real Winworth is used to. Filter product ideas. A lot of you got that right. Balance targets in an agile development project. A lot of you went on to this fake answer. It's not what Real Winworth is used for. Obviously, in an agile development project, you want a balanced target, but not using this method. So it's about filtering product ideas. Good. Let's see. Nick, you stayed on top, but Schmiedel is running up again. Wow. Up 7 places. Domi is the highest climber. Congratulations. Question 6. A corporate process landscape. Is the sum of standard procedures in a company. A lot of you got that right. Very good.
Wow.
Who's impressed here? Get your microphone on. Whoever said wow. I think it's well. All right. 4 players have reached answers. Answer streak 3. Next question. 7. Agile product development. focuses on people and how to motivate them. Yes. It's very flexible because it doesn't require planning. That is what some people assume, but it does require planning. Only the planning circles or cycles are a lot shorter. So we do planning for each of the 2-week periods, 2-week cycles when we actually do the development. We also do a stage planning in the beginning. So the planning is not as detailed and not as long-term. Rather, the long-term planning is only on a course level. But you do planning. So this is a misconception that Agile, which a lot of people have, that Agile is not without planning. And the Agile coach is not the formal head of the Agile team, merely a coach. Sometimes the Scrum Master, when in software processes, when they do Scrum Master is the literal head of the team. But that is actually not what the Agile coach is supposed to be. It should be between the management and the team. And yes, it is possible to do hardware development. Last question. Uh-oh. Middle. Something happened here to your leadership. Okay. Next question. You only have like 1 or 2 seconds time for answering. It's a real fast answer. There's only a true and false. So only a true and false. Be fast. Okay? I want to win this quiz. No. That's too bad. 6 of you don't want to win this quiz. That's really too bad. Sorry for you guys. Let's see how this whole thing turns out. Congratulations, Dom is the winner. And also to our place number 2 and 3, Vitor and Labalsep. Thank you so much for playing with me. I hope you had fun doing that. Let's turn to your homework. I have already opened one of the first projects. I don't know whose work that is, just a second. But if you want to comment, whoever did this, that would be terrific.
Hello.
Hello.
Can I suggest something?
Yes, please.
Maybe would be interesting like to do this Kahoot thing in every beginning of the lecture with the what we saw in the last lecture. So in the last week about the last week, so to zusammenfassen.
Yeah, a summary of the last lecture.
Yeah, summary.
Yes, I have to think of good questions, but I will try to do that. I think that's a good suggestion. I can't promise though that I will be able to do. Maybe we'll do it every once in a while. I can't promise that we'll do it. Thank you for the suggestion. Jonas, question about question 3. I thought a vision statement goes farther into the future than the mission statement. Yes, it does. Now, I don't remember what question 3 said, but it does. Question 3, mission statement. Yes. Is usually longer. Oh, it's usually longer than a vision statement, but not the, that was misleading maybe. I meant longer in terms of the sentence is longer, not in terms of it has a longer preview period. So it is usually longer than a vision statement, just the sentence is longer. The vision statement has to be very compact because everybody has to read right away. You also want people to know the mission statement, but the mission statement is more targeted at, you know, the internal staff, and it's more concrete, and so it can be a bit longer. And it defines the present state and medium-term future, and it defines that what the company does, who they do it for, and how they want to do it. So it's a bit more concrete, while the vision statement only states the long-term target, so the state in the future. The vision statement actually says what do we need to do as a company on very broad terms in the coming years to get to the vision. But it's more. Okay, good. Any other questions about the quiz? Then let's look at the project schedule. This was company K. So now we should be back at least. We have in the work breakdown structure on the top level, we have 3 categories. One is recipe, one is development, and one is tests. And if we go down one level further, break up recipe, then we have research, ingredients, testing, test baking, handmade, test baking, hand bake, and cake portfolio. And we see how long these tasks need, and we see that one task is the prerequisite of the next task. We have a milestone which is called cake portfolio. Not really clear what cake portfolio means, but that's okay if that's what you want to call your milestone. And then we have a long period of supply chain. Then that's the recipe part. Then we have a development part, research, adapt 3D printer and production layout, prototype for 3D printers. I did not figure out, and probably some of you did, how to zoom in and zoom out of this, and I didn't really spend a lot of time. So usually there is, if you like press Control and run the mouse wheel, you can actually zoom in and out, so you can condense the graphics. I can do that now for you. So we have the milestone, a number of these tasks. All of these tasks have to be done in order to lead to this milestone, which is the first 3D printed cake. Okay, we're printing 3D cakes, and that is a great milestone. And if we have that, we can start optimizing things. Energy supply, process security, and capacity security. And then there is the whole testing procedure. So after we have done our first cake, we're still doing some tasks in the development, but we also start in parallel with the testing. So you see that different categories of tasks overlap here. That is very nice. let's look at the details of one of the tasks. 112 hours. So this is in hours, specified in days or hours. That usually can be chosen. It has a predecessor, which is the first 3-day printed cake, our milestone, and it has a successor, which is the comparison. We don't have resources, so you didn't use the resources here. Yeah, great. Any comments or questions about this task? This particular assignment here, done by company K. And my OBS window. Okay, then let's turn to the next one. Company F, Air Goods, work breakdown structure. That is here. Anybody here from Air Goods and wants to comment? That'd be nice. Air Goods or Air Gods. You guys did the assignment. You don't want to comment? Okay. We have the medical drone for medical delivery, apparently. We have, as the top level work breakdown structure, market research, ordering system, drone navigation system, after sales support, service and development, purchasing and marketing. Very nice. Great structure. Then below market research, there is a focus group that focuses on hospitals, one that focuses on flight range analysis, on order frequency analysis, so how often do the drones have to fly, ordering system requirements. Ordering system develops server architecture, interface front-end development, back-end development, authorization system, and so on and so on. So basically you look at what are the core headlines, what are the areas that of tasks that need to be done, and then you broke it down into specific tasks. That is very nicely done. You completely understood the exercise. And then let's see what you made out of it in terms of your Gantt chart. So that is great. We have now the same headlines. So we have market research, then we have the ordering system, drone navigation system, after sales support, service development, purchasing, and marketing. So we have the same headlines that we had in our work breakdown structure. And now the individual tasks, and you have chosen the, I think you have chosen the same tasks. Focus groups, flight range analysis, order frequency analysis, ordering system requirements. These were the tasks that we had below market research. Then we have the market research. You see the overall task, market research, it's that black bar at the top. Takes actually 149 days. Focus group research, that's 30 days. And then we have other tasks, and they have dependencies. For example, flight range analysis. I can't double click because it's not the project file, but flight range analysis now has a dependency on this one down here, which is drone purchasing. So before we have a drone, we can't do flight range analysis. So the topic, all of the market research analyses things, they're up here. However, in order to do flight range analysis, apparently we need the actual drone, so that can be done only later in the project. So there is a dependency. Very nicely done. If you would now, we see, for example, that let's look at this task here. That seems to be, I think, the third bar. Or the second, no, that is the flight range analysis. So if you look at this project schedule and you see flight range analysis is really, really late because we have to do drone purchasing first. One idea, one option would be, I don't know about the specifics, but just assuming some things, you have to wait for drone purchasing. Well, maybe there is a way if you can't do the purchasing process earlier, because that is now almost on what they call the critical path of the project. This line of events, if you follow up the dependencies that lead up to flight range analysis, this line of events basically determines the entire duration of the project. So if we could move that up and down here, we have something that also takes long, but that would also take out some risk. So maybe there is a way to rent a drone to do the flight range analysis and not wait for the purchasing. So as a project manager, you want to then try to detangle this project web and make sure that you're reducing some of the dependencies, and you can make things run more in parallel and have less risks. And with the video quality is not good, it is difficult to read. Okay. The problem with, we're doing live streaming on Discord. The problem is with live streaming that the live streaming like Discord and Teams and Zoom and so on, they will sacrifice quality to stay real time. So the worst thing to a live streaming system is that they're not real time anymore. On YouTube, it's a streaming interface. It uses a different technology. This is why we have this 20 to 30 seconds delay. The YouTube quality should be a lot better because there we never sacrifice quality. So the live systems, just if they don't get enough data at some point in time, they will just drop the quality. Okay, I'm sorry that you're not able to read it. It's actually, I can zoom in any further. Let's see if we have any milestones. Here's a milestone. It's hard to see now what that is. Back-end development, I think, is the milestone. The milestone doesn't seem to have dependencies on something else. That is a little strange to me now. Usually you would think a milestone depends on other things to be completed, and then once you have completed a number of tasks, you have reached the milestone. Here the milestone looks like a beginning. I think there may be still a misunderstanding about what milestones should be. Okay, if there are no questions about this particular one, then I'll continue with the next one. Thank you very much for doing these homeworks. exoskeleton for medical use. The top headlines are customer survey, create product requirements, prototype testing, and marketing. I can zoom in a little bit. I thought again, you have understood the concept. So we start with the work breakdown structure with some of the headlines. And then we have the tasks underneath. And we have some dependencies. This looks more like a linear project. So this is quite sequential. You look at the succession of tasks. One. So maybe for this particular project, without looking at every detail, there is an opportunity of parallelizing some of the tasks because it looks like a very linear course. Maybe there are some things that can be done in parallel. We do have parallel tasks like creating a survey and collect customer data. So there are already parallel tasks, but maybe there is, you can also start, for example, with creating a new customer survey while you're still doing the some of the other tasks. So maybe there's different people involved. You also, as a project manager, you also have to think about the project resources because they're allocated to you as the project manager at a certain period of time. So if you can make best use of the resources that are allocated to you and make their tasks as compact as possible, then it's easier because they will, once they are done with their tasks, they will leave the project. So to have someone who comes into the project at several points, but only for a short time, more difficult to manage than if you have that person for a longer time and deploy their talents for a number of work packages that can be done in succession. You jump in if you have any questions. Otherwise, I'll just continue to the next one. Planning, design phase, financial phase, quality plan, project risks. We have a separate section for project risk, production stage, sales and marketing stage, and a number of tasks below. So let's look at how this looks. We see that we have dependencies between the tasks in the project. We see that we have some milestones that are also financing closed. Let's look at this milestone in particular. It has a predecessor, which is present the plan. So after the plan is presented, that's the last action, then it's done. And it has a number of successors. So only after this plan presentation is done and completed, we can start with designing the prototype, which is very typical for project milestones and also project gates that you have to pass a certain condition before you can actually invest money in building prototypes, for example. Very well done. Thank you very much. Market research, product design, product development, production planning, marketing. I do see one milestone, which is the start of product development. And here's another one, set of production. Okay, thank you. There is one with a work breakdown structure. Sorry, Excel is a tough one for sharing on a screen, at least on my computer. I'm sorry, I can't share Excel. Excel gets upset with different screens, and this is a Microsoft product on Microsoft Windows. They should actually do the best job, but all the Office tools on my computer do the worst as soon as I have several screens attached. That is, we had the work breakdown structure in Excel. I'm sorry I can't show it. Sorry to the team. Next time I will put it in a PDF. We have the work breakdown structure at the top. A1, organized testing tools. A2, providing buffer, develop customer service, develop tool software, connecting software tools, and so on. That's quite elaborate advertising. Thank you very much. That is really detailed, and you also have a number of dependencies, so you put quite a bit of thought into that, if we can see that, where we have the dependencies between tasks within the different packages, which is typical that, you know, although you set top-down packages, you still have certain requirements and dependencies between the headlines, and that is never conflict-free, and that's just how this game works. I see that you have all these milestones in there. That's also, I mean, this looks like a very realistic project plan that could come from any project. You have a number of milestones upon completion of some of these phases and tasks. You put milestones. Very nice. I like it very much. Thank you very much. Sorry I couldn't open your Excel document. We have two more. A work breakdown structure. Sun 41, market research with a number of tasks: product design, development, production planning, marketing, market research. And thank you. Also, I don't know whether you have attached a Gantt chart with the same thing. Here we have the last Gantt project schedule. With purchasing, production, and sales. The only thing is that this is like a nested thing. So sales is part of production. I don't think it was meant to be like that. And you should be able to shift it to the left side. So now it's not part of production anymore. So I use this shift left to indent and undent to undent the sales, so it becomes one of the top headlines. And I assume this is part of your work breakdown structure. Thank you very much for doing all of these great homeworks. I think you all did a great job. Congratulations. Yeah. Any questions? Or comments? The work breakdown structure, as we discussed, there's no standard decomposition structure that you have to follow. So you can use any types, as we saw in all these very good examples. You can use any type of breaking this down. You can break it down by departments in the organization who will take responsibility. You can break it down by technology, like software and hardware. You can break it down into project phases, where you say, okay, this is the concept phase, this is more of the development phase. This is really up to you. It's only the thing, eat the elephant in slices, but you can, cut the slices any way you want. That is up to you. And then from there, we then do the detailed planning and the Gantt chart. I'm not exactly sure where we stopped. Looking at organization is important. I don't think we discussed organization. We looked at the other two objectives. We said the triangle of objectives: cost, quality, and time. They're tightly knit together, and if you pull on one end, the other two ends will typically move. And in many project management books, you will find these three, and it's called the triangle of project management. But in reality, scope and organization are really important. Organization is what is the setting of the project with respect to people. And your organization that you're embedded into with your project will be executing the project. So you depend on the organization. You depend on the resources, the people to be committed to your project. You depend on other department heads not pulling resources out of your project. You depend on the people not being on vacation. It's very often a discussion, by the way, who signs off the vacation slip. Is it the line manager, also die direkte Führungskraft, the line manager, or is it the project manager? And depending on how strong project management is in a particular company, very often it is actually the project manager, and which is actually a good sign, because that then means project management is set up with a strong position. But very often, for process and procedure reason, it's the direct manager, the line manager, who will sign off the vacation slip. Now, if this guy doesn't ask the project manager is it okay that Charlie X goes on vacation for the next 4 weeks? Then that is a problem, because maybe you as a project manager rely on Charlie X because he has committed to doing his job for the next 4 weeks in your project. And he sneaks out, goes to his line manager, says, well, I have a signed vacation slip, so I'm leaving. Sorry, project manager, I leave you alone with your project. So that is all part of the organization, and that is also how the organization deals with projects. As I said, organizations where project management has a high value, this is typically that project managers are taken out of the typical hierarchy structure, or they have a vertical reporting line that is very direct to some person high up. So they don't depend on department heads or team heads that are same ones that would dedicate or deny resources. So if I'm a project manager and I report to the team or department manager hardware development, and I'm responsible to delivering the project, and I need 2 hardware developers, but my boss is the same person that pulls out the hardware developers from my team, because I said I need hardware developers for another project, then there's no way to escalate because it's my direct boss. What can I do? So it's a lot better if I don't report to the hardware manager, nor the software manager, nor anybody else, and they will take out my resources because they can, because they are the heads, the direct managers of these people. Then I can escalate because my boss is the head of program management, for example. And the head of program management can then talk to the head of hardware management and say, well, our rule is that dedicated project resources are not just pulled out, not without, looking at the facts and figures and discussing what the best solution is. So there's a way that when I go up to my manager, there is a balance of power that is typically better. So that all has to do with organization. It's about also what is the culture of the organization. In some organizations, the head, the chief executive or the managing director just walks into R&D and says, here, I have a new customer project. I talked to this important customer and they need some work to be done urgently. And you 5 now do this work for me immediately. And then if I'm the project manager, that I can't do anything. I have a real problem. That has to do with company culture. And if that is the culture in the company where you are project manager, you have to address this as an issue. And if it doesn't get resolved, I would advise you not to remain project manager in such a company, because that is an adverse culture and you will always lose as a project manager. These are just a few examples that have to do with organization. Very often projects have what they call a steering group. At Deggendorf University, I'm a member of a steering group that deals with our new homepage. Before we had that, it was like there was a project manager, the new website, the new homepage. You noticed probably that it changed a few weeks or months ago. And it's been a long-standing project, and a lot of thought has been put into the infrastructure. There's a lot under the hood that we changed, and there's a lot of potential that is built under the hood into the system. That is, not everything is visible right now, but there's better technology for future developments. That was the idea. So when it was first set up, it had only a project manager, and the project manager would basically report to Martina Heim, to the head of marketing, and she then to President Peter Sperber. That would be it. And it was difficult because there was not, in the beginning, there was not clear guidance about the targets and technology, and Mr. Sperber has a lot of other things to deal with and was not really interested in website technologies, for example, in detailed requirements. So a team suggested, let's install a steering group. And that steering group, it's now, for example, myself, I'm head of one faculty, one department. It's a person from marketing, it's a person from IT, from technology. So from different parts of the organization, typically managers, but they don't have to be managers, are part of the steering group. And the project manager reports to the steering group. And Mr. Sperber, as president, as head of the university, is part of that meeting, and he will possibly make the ultimate decision. But the steering group is actually a body that, because you have different people involved, they bring in a lot of different perspectives and ask the right questions. So it's actually very valuable to the project team to have the steering group, but it's also valuable to us as an organization, that a steering group is making the decisions or suggesting the decisions, because it's a lot more balanced than if you had the project manager only report to one person. And also, if there's conflicts within the steering group, that can be more easily resolved because there's just from different parts of the organization, so conflicts are resolved in a balanced way. That is a good way to have a reporting line for the project manager. So that means the project manager actually reports basically to the steering group, and they will have a meeting every month or every 2 months or every 3 months where the project manager gives a report and says, this is what we've done, these were the difficulties that we faced, this is what we have accomplished, and this is where we need help. The project owner is the person who initiates the project, who owns maybe the budget, the business target. So in that case, in our website project, this would be President Sperber. And then after him, it would also be the head of marketing, Martina Heim, because the website is part of the marketing responsibility. Project champion, that is often a person who is like a godfather and pate. So typically this is one person in the steering team, but it could be some person in the management. And as I said, because project management is really critical with the balance of power, and sometimes you have a person that has power and is maybe not directly involved with the project, and there's also no conflict of interest. But the project manager then has a senior management person that he or she can turn to in order to resolve issues or get some guidance. Very often the guidance is about how do I deal with the problems in the organization, and the project champion then has more focus on that particular project. And in a number of companies that I know, all the projects are given project champions, and the project champions are typically from the top level management team. So within the top level management team, there's also a balance of power, because each of the top manager has one project that may be also important for the others. So if you ruin my project, I'll ruin yours, or the other way around. Let's see if you can help my project, and I'll help your project as well. So this top management team kind of looks specifically, each person looks into one project in a little more detail, and is like the coach and guiding person. It's also a good structure.
I
Yes.
have a question.
Sure.
So how is about the hierarchy? Hierarchy?
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah. Between the project manager and the steering group. I mean, the steering group, will they have the power to decide, okay, this decision or this direction that you took is not the optimal, we would like in this way. But if the project manager think, no, I think this is the better way, best way, who has done in the end the power to decide this will be the direction that the project will take?
It is actually the steering group that will take this decision. And the question is here between project owner and steering group. That depends on the setup. So sometimes the project owner, let's say Mr. Sperber is the project owner for this website project. So as the president of the university, he can make the ultimate decision. But in reality, the steering group takes all the decisions in our project. They do. And they will take decisions about direction. Now, they don't do like micromanagement. They will not get involved in the details that the project manager's responsibilities. If they interfered with the direct responsibilities of the project manager, then the project manager would say, okay, then you do the project. If you know everything better than I, then you do the project. So the steering group should set targets. It's about direction, and it's about issues with, especially with time quality resources, for example, or time quality cost. So one of the typical questions is, we have a technical problem, or a supplier has failed to deliver to ship. So we will have, we have a deadline in summer, so we will have to deliver the project 2 months later than our deadline because of the supplier's failure or this problem or whatever, or somebody gets sick or whatever. And then the steering group will say, well, what is more important to us? Is it meeting the deadline, or is it staying within budget? And they may say, the deadline is really so important to us, we'll spend another extra money to get these goods from another supplier, and we will fast track it for more money some way. So that is the type of decisions that the steering group sets. If there's conflicts, if there's questions about a greater direction, if there's conflicts about resource issues, because sometimes somebody needs your people in your project, and they need a person for good reason, because something has happened, some product needs fixing or so. But the steering group has a balanced view on that. And for the project manager, it's really good because they will take over some of the responsibility. The project manager's responsibility is to make the problems visible, to show the risks, make them transparent. I have seen a project manager, a highly valued project manager, a person that has been for a long time in that particular company. This project manager got fired after, I don't know, having worked for 15 years for this company, because this project manager was not communicating huge and very significant issues and risks in this project. This project manager always thought, we'll fix it. And the pressure was rising, and the project manager was, fighting very hard, but there was no way he could accomplish that because the problems were too big. And he didn't tell anyone. He told the steering team, everything is okay. And then suddenly, the project went further, and it went to some important milestone. And then he had to say, well, I'm sorry, we can't deliver. We've had this problem for half a year and I couldn't resolve it. And he got fired for not telling anyone. So that is the responsibility of the project manager, to make things manageable, transparent, and present what are the decisions that need to be taken here. And then the steering group can actually take the decision. And if it goes wrong, he has the backup of the steering team. It's not on the project manager's shoulders anymore. So this is very, very helpful. And I advise you, if you set up a project that is critical and that involves, that's critical for an organization, it involves maybe several departments, I would advise you to suggest or set up a steering group to run the project manager. It is really very helpful. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. We talked about quality. Quality is meeting the specification, but sometimes, quality is not enough because the specification doesn't say everything that's really the project targets. And that's where we have a difference between scope, quality. We talked about scope, that, what is the real business reason for implementing the CRM project. And it's not actually to have all of the CRM features that are in the specification installed and nobody uses it, but the actual target is that people really use it. And so quality also has to do with managing between or making an alignment of scope and quality. So the quality targets, the explicit targets that are stated in the project, are the same targets that are actually scope of the project. There's a misalignment, that will be a problem. And agreeing on quality isn't really easy. So typically project managers want to have criteria, because what is the meaning of success? When have I been successful as a project manager? And very often this is really not clear. So you have been successful and everybody's happy, but how do you make everybody happy? For you as a product manager, it is very important to specify exactly what needs to be done and what will it look like to have it successful. And in this agile method, we had the tasks, and we also had criteria what makes the task successful. Yeah, that's really important. Owner and contractor must be able to agree on both requirements and cost, because if you leave one of the two open, cost or requirements, then you're set up for failure. Yeah, as I said, not everything in these slides is really relevant in terms of you don't have to know everything. So I marked everything that I thought was important yellow. Miller-Heiman, as you see that here on that slide, that's a method that has to do with CRM, customer relationship management, managing customer, managing sales processes, and so on. That's a management method which is quoted here. Sometimes there is a document that's called a quality plan. Very often, as a project manager in your team, you will have a person responsible for quality. Quality is a broad concept. A quality person is not the one that has the Schieblehre or does the detailed measurements. He's not the tester, but rather he's the person to make sure that the processes are kept, that the tests are correctly done, that everything is performed as it's specified and as the processes say. And then we have, here in the middle, preventive quality assurance. That is making sure things don't go wrong in the first place. Then we have corrective quality control, which is things have gone wrong. How do I correct the problems that have gone wrong? And basically, this is what this enthusiasm thing here says. Quality is not something that should be dedicated or delegated to one person. You're responsible for quality, but quality is something that only can only be achieved by everyone. And very often in project teams, there's like different departments or different groups that have different tasks. And if they help each other, like sometimes they point fingers. So they say, well, I couldn't do my job because you have not done your job right. And so they point fingers at each other. It doesn't work well. It's not a quality-minded organization. It's rather an organization that tries to defend why the quality was not good, which is not really helpful. There's nothing gained by pointing fingers and finding who was to blame for it. Rather, you want things to go right in the first place, and that's a different setup. So the team should always think for the other, what could go wrong if I do my job like that, or if I'm late for a day, what does that mean for the others? Take the phone, call the other guy, hey, sorry, I'm gonna be late. And I tell you not after the fact, but before the fact, I'm gonna be late. How can you deal with that? Is there a way we can, make sure the impact is not too bad for you, like that? So quality again has to do with people. Cost, we have basically two types of cost in a project. We have the project cost, so the actual cost for the work that's being done, and we have in R&D projects also the product cost later on. Both cost sides have to be kept in check. Both cost types have to be estimated. What it says here, the cost of precise estimate, the cost of precise estimating can be very high. In some organizations, that goes back to the Agile method. In some organizations, there is a culture of doing very detailed cost estimates in the beginning, with the notion, if I do a very precise cost estimate and I ask everyone who's going to be involved in the project to estimate what are they going to spend in the project, how many hours will the tester take for testing the water tightness of this medical drone, and how many times will the developer of the firmware to do the battery charging system will they need for this, for their tasks, and so on. So sometimes the whole development process is basically done twice. The first time it's done by only estimating, so people have to think through everything they have to do, and they estimate a lot in very detail, and then they actually do it. And the problem is that the precise estimation creates the impression that it's actually accurate. Because if you have a lot of precision, 1.00589, that looks like it's a very accurate number. But if that number is actually between 0 and 5, there's no point in adding 5 digits after the decimal point. And that is the problem with precise estimating. And in one company where I did a project, it was actually that for the first half year, there was large products they developed. For the first half year, they would only do estimating. And the R&D team basically said, well, half of our entire work is being occupied by testing or by estimating the time we need for various projects, because you guys want to plan so much, and we can't actually develop anymore because we're only estimating the time we need for development. And later on, it turned out that all of the estimates were only ballpark numbers. That's where the Agile process comes in, where we do a lot less size estimation. We do rough estimations. We look at other projects. We look at our stomach feeling, but we don't try to be over exact. So that has to do with cost. That is, again, as I said, also the estimation is true for both the project cost, product cost. Accuracy of estimates, typically 30 to 50% at proposal time, and at budgeting time 20 to 35%. That depends really on industry. I think these numbers are actually pretty low. I think a lot higher. I've seen accuracies that are 50 to 200. 200 means double the cost, 50 means half of the cost, so it's somewhere between 50 and 200. And I have seen projects that have gone like at times the original cost, because it's really hard to do cost estimation for something that is new. We talked about cost versus time. Will project cost go up if we go faster or slower? It depends on, because if we go slower, that means we're utilizing the resources for a longer time. We're going slower in terms of the the time we take for the project. But if the people are engaged, they will actually put more working hours into the project. So the cost actually goes up for the overall project. But if you have to order things and there is like a penalty for getting it faster, or you have to buy it at a higher price from the market because there's less offering, you want it fast, then there is a direct coupling between cost and time, where making it faster will be more expensive and going slower will be less expensive. So it really depends on the setup. But there is a dependency, and it's not always very easy. I'm jumping over some slides. The project clock. Time is generally less important than project managers think relative to the general objective. And also it depends on the industry, but very often if you miss the objectives and then you have to correct, or you're going the wrong path, you have to correct, then all of the time estimates are garbage. Then the risk very often is you have to restart the project. So very often we think about, we can't be one month late, but actually the question going the wrong path and doing a hasty decision and not a thorough decision and steering the wrong way will add another year to the project. But that really depends. I'm just telling you, we have to look at these things, these criteria, and the last one is time. One thing about buffers, when you ask people, also if you look at your project schedules, everybody who did the assignment probably thought about how long will that particular task need, and then think, okay, could be a bit faster, but it could also be a bit longer. So to be on the safe side, I'll add maybe 5 days contingency buffer. So I think it will take 10 days, or let's say 15 days, but I'll put in 20 days into the project schedule, because when we say 20 days, then I can make sure that we're actually done. So this is a safe way to go to a project, to add these little contingency buffers. However, what happens is that when you put in 20 days, how long will this task actually take? Well, typically it will actually take 20 days, because that's what the people see, and they say, okay, we have 20 days time, so we'll take 20 days. Actually, they could have done it in 15, but since you put in 20, it's not going to happen. So it is a better way to put buffers in the end of the project rather than at the beginning of the project, or rather than distributed through all the tasks. So rather than adding the buffers to every little task, you say, well, you all do exact real estimates without any buffers. Now I have 10 tasks, and all of these tasks are planned. They're planned without buffers. Then I know it's not going to work, because something is going to go wrong. Not all of the tasks will be completed in time. But I keep this estimate up, and I add a contingency buffer at the end of the project. So we add maybe 30 days at the end of the project. So our done date is actually 30 days before we actually need it. And we say, this is the contingency buffer for any things that go wrong in the project. But this buffer is not distributed to the owners of the other task packets. Rather, the steering committee or the project manager basically owns that buffer, and it's only released when it's actually needed in a packet, in one task or in one action package. So some risk has actually occurred and has come true, and one task needs longer, then this buffer is used to extend the task. And the problem is obviously that also, because there's dependencies, the other tasks will shift out. But putting the buffer in the end is a is still a better way, because this becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that all the buffers are going to be used that you put in wherever they are. Here we talk about early start, late finish. So if you plan something and for example, if another task is the predecessor and it's done ahead of time, then I can do an early start. So maybe I can actually create some buffer because I start early. And here, you know, obviously these dependencies, a late start and a late finish, and you just shift something back, and you can actually manage these things also in your project schedule, and you can let things float in your schedule if you look at what are the options for early start and what are the risks of a late start and so on. So you can try to put in some robustness. This all has to do with managing the times and the critical path. We talked about that. That is the succession of tasks that leads to the end of the project, and that cannot be compressed anymore, because all these things depend on each other and have to be done in sequence. So there's no way to compress it any further. And as a project manager, you want to look at the critical path. When we look at the balancing, we have liabilities and assets. So assets are things that are given to you. Given to you is money, time, and are the people. People is like, same, this would be organization. So we said we have these 5 objectives. So the people, that would be the objective organization. Right outside. Okay, organization. Doesn't erase for some reason. So cost, money is cost. People, organization, and time. These are things that are given to you. Liability are things that you have to deliver. You deliver the quality and the scope. And we see again, the scope and the quality are tightly knit together. They're interacting very closely, scope and quality. And in order to deliver quality, you need money, people, and time. So again, if you have problems with the quality on the liability side to deliver things, then you require something on the asset side in order to do. That's actually a good picture to see what is it that we have to balance against each other, which doesn't mean that we have dependencies within these assets as well, obviously. I found something that's called the project management game, and I thought, let's play that. I do think when you call the link that I gave you on Discord, thatpmgame.com, you should get your own username. So we now have a temporary username, and I want you to call this up. The idea is you have a project that is building a thingamabob, calibrate the contraption, restart the thingy, mobilize, watch camelids, retool the lingum, make and project complete. So these are just nonsense tasks. and you have a budget of 760,000 euro. You have project resources. Jim is average. Vicky is also average. John is low cost, and Kathy is fast. So now you assign these people, and let's see who can get the project done at the lowest cost. Make sure that every task is assigned a project. I will not show you what I'm gonna set. Let's see if you can. I played it only once, I promise. So probably you can beat me. I wasn't hiding my assignment very well. It says I win. Under budget. Budget. Actual window. $622K under budget. I only spent I spent 622 and I'm under budget. Okay. 722. Winner as well. Oh, 565. 750. Now, I think all these projects have different budgets also, so they're probably not directly comparable. So whenever you call it, it creates a new project. This one is 757. So what I don't know how you went about it, but what I looked for was the critical path. Critical path here is test the gizmo, do that other thing, and realign the doodad. So the duration of the project depends on these 3 tasks. I did assign the fastest one. Mark is expensive. Now we don't have a slow one. John is low cost, Mark is expensive, Anne is average, Jane is slow and low cost. So we only seem to have Mark, but he's expensive. So I would assign here in this example I would assign the task on the critical path. I don't want to assign it to Mark, who is expensive, but I don't want to assign it to someone who is slow. So it could be either John or Anne, I don't know. But assuming that low cost could also mean slow, I will assign N. And then for the other task, this is a slow task. Jane is slow and low cost, so I'll have Jane do that, because if she takes a lot longer, that doesn't really matter. And I'll assign this task to, it could also be, could be Jane again, but let's try John. So we see this guy here is a lot slower. Doesn't get the task done in time. Now Anne is really fast. I could have actually, so she was done before the task, before the time in week 3. So I could have possibly optimized by assigning a slow person, but a low cost person to that last task, and actually saved some money there. Wait, I have to start a new game again. I can't retry this one. Okay, there's probably tons of resources on the web about project management for yourself if you find something else. One thing you want to do in each project is kickoff. What is a kickoff? When you leave the kickoff meeting, everyone on the project team must be on the same page, meaning everybody on the project team should know what are the targets for the project, what is the time frame, how are we going to organize the project, how will we communicate, what are the critical risks in the project, what is my expectation, what am I going to do as the next thing, as the first step in the project, and so on and so on. The kickoff in the project is really important, and it also has to do with this people dimension, because during the kickoff, people get to know each other, possibly if you're in the same company, they already know each other, but still, as a project team, you will form a social unit, a team that's going to stay together for the duration of the project, and you depend on each other. So kickoff is something that's really important, and now we're in the implementation phase of the project. In order for preparing the kickoff, a few steps: develop goals and deliverables, identify the project team members, develop project assumptions, and develop a preliminary project plan. All these things shall be presented at the kickoff meeting. Define key success factors. What is important to the project to make it successful? Identify key issues, risks. Schedule the project kickoff meeting. You have to set an appointment for that, and send the kickoff meeting material to all participants. Here you see an example of a kickoff meeting agenda. And maybe it's helpful to you, maybe you have other project management resources, but you can pull out these slides and just see when you do your own project, have you thought about all the things that are listed here in this kickoff agenda. We talked about project management system. Very often, we're not going to talk about Belden. Very often you don't need Microsoft Project. You have this Project Libre. You can use that to do a project schedule. But very often the project management tools and systems are very complicated, and people project a lot of things into these tools that are not being delivered by the tools. The tools shall help you, your task as a project manager, to have an overview of the project, but they are not solving your problems. So they're only facilitating, the planning and the making things visible, but they're not solving things. So a lot of these tools, also Microsoft Project, can do all the resource management, can do recalculations, can track all the completion status of each task and so on. But they also need to be fed with information. So very often it turns out that feeding the data is not reliable because people will not give you all the detailed information, or it's a big burden. And it turns out that a lot of these tools are actually a burden to the project rather than they're actually helping. Especially when it comes to multi-project management, you try to manage resources around projects and think the computer can solve these issues and make sure there's no resource conflict. That's never going to work in experience. Yeah, I skipped over these because there's no content. Baseline, forecast, plan, actuals, allocating work, monitoring, controlling. Very often in a project team, you have a project controller that is a person who helps you gather all the cost. It's your job as a project manager to keep track of what's happening in the project and how the cost and the project develops. I think that is maybe a good chart because that kind of shows, make this yellow, that shows how things go together, what all the things are that you have to consider. The project time management, the project cost management, the quality management, the communication in the project. Does everybody in the project who needs the information gets the information? The risk management, the purchasing, the procurement is purchasing, same thing. Procurement, Beschaffung, management, and the scope management, verify and control the scope. All of these tasks are in the end the job of the project manager, and for some of these jobs you can get help in your project team. For example, if you have a project controller, they will look at all the cost side. If you have a quality manager, they can look at the quality side. If you have a procurement guy, they can look at all the procurement jobs and so on. So in the end, still, it's going to be your responsibility to deliver on these different aspects. Last thing, when we have completed a project, it is also important, we looked at the kickoff, it is also important to close the project. Completion of project work once the project's results have been realized. Commissioning of the project deliverables, whatever is it, the results of the project has to be given to whoever needs them. So production, if it's a product that you've done, you turn over responsibility to a product manager, to the production team, however the setup is. It needs to be accepted by the project owner or project sponsor. So the person who has asked you to do the project, they have to sign off. Yes, this is what we have expected, and you are released as the project manager from your duties. And secondly, so that's the official part, to come to a closure. And very often that doesn't happen in a good way. So very often the project kind of spills out into other projects and there is no clear end. Really, really important if you're ever a project manager to make sure there's a clear end and there's a clear commitment by the management to you as a project manager. You have done your duty. This project has been completed, and not keep it open forever, because then things will fly into your face. And then lessons learned. That's the same thing like we do in the Agile process. In every sprint, we do lessons learned. We do this retrospective. For a project, I would recommend doing this the Agile style. So you do the lessons learned, the retrospective after every sprint. But at least at the end of the project, you should have a project closure and lessons learned meeting. This is what it says here. So commissioning the project, documenting and forwarding all the experiences made in the project. It's also close out. Talked about that. Typically, we have some kind of a contract or a specification or a requirements document or a project order. Some companies have like a project order that exactly says what is the scope of the project and what are the deliverables. So that is like a contract where you close down. Some of the projects are more towards changing, for example, how a department works or something like that, changing the processes. Then administrative closure. Well, it doesn't matter. Sorry. So the administrative closure basically is that everything that you have organized, the people have been assigned to you, so you have to turn them back, release them from their duties as project team members. The cost, the controlling department closes the cost collection numbers. So there's like numbers in the ERP system where all the costs are collected and gathered and summarized. So that would be administrative closure. Lessons learned. What is it that we did good in the project? What could we do better next time? And very often there is some remaining tasks that are spilling out of the project. Still, then these tasks need to be tracked somehow, or you have remaining assignments which need to be done, but you want to limit those to as few and as little as possible, because you should have a clear cut when the project is actually has ended and not have a lot of remaining tasks. But sometimes obviously some like final report that is maybe done after the closure, because the closure meeting is important, isn't the report as well. Then what do you do with all the data that were created in the project? Because maybe somebody else will do a similar project, and maybe they will be interested in accessing the information that you had in your project. So typically you build something like a project history file where you gather all the documentation that came up in the project. And the important thing is here not to have a data cemetery with lots of documents that are all draft and are of unclear state, but rather clean up your file directory and in your file system and have the documents that are really valuable to the project. That's really up to you as a project manager. So it becomes valuable to somebody else who wants to do some research and dig into your project later on. But it's a good idea because a lot of work and a lot of experience has gone into your project. So you want to archive this data and make it available for future reference. Project history file. Here you see a list of what could be in the file, not that in detail. And releasing the team, I said, so the personnel that was assigned to you as a project manager is now given back to their line managers and their standard functions, or to the next project. Final project report. That includes also the project closure. Here is what could be in such a final report. Project strengths and weaknesses, obviously your overall success of the project, consequences, and any open tasks that have spilled out of the project and still need to be performed, but then they are typically performed in the responsibility of the line management, the department, not not from you as a project manager. And really important is celebrating success. You have stayed together for maybe 18 months as a project team, and you have worked hard, and it is really important for the soul and for the team spirit to celebrate your success. Gather somewhere outside. You should get a budget as a project manager to do that, so that should be included. And you could, if you set up your project and you're a first-time project manager in your company, then ask for a budget for the kickoff meeting, and also ask for a budget for the celebration. In the beginning, before you engage in the project and you commit to doing the project, you can ask for things. You can state your demands, and you say, well, I need a budget because we want to go eat, and we want to do, I don't know, go to the Klettergarten or whatever. So have some event for the project team to basically celebrate and be together and look back on the project. And that is also creates, the kind of social relationship and community that everybody can rely on later. And once you have worked together intensely in a project team, that is a network that you've created within a company across probably usually several departments that you can rely on for later times and call on. And the celebrating success meeting helps. Obviously, you should also recognize outstanding performers in all of the projects. You have people who you can't do without, who have gone the extra mile and put in the extra hour that made your project successful. Really important. And you should also get your management team, your CEO, your head of R&D, whoever, to also show their respect to your team members or to the entire team who performed well. So also your role as a project manager is as a leadership person. Project manager is a leader. Make sure that you think about the well-being of your staff also in this way, being recognized for their merits and for their success. Okay. That is it. Questions? Comments?
Do you hear me?
Yes.
I would like to make a suggestion.
Yes.
Because in the lectures we cover a lot of themes, and I think to study for the exams, I think it's a lot of information to get. So I would like to propose, if possible, that before the exams that you make a list of exercise, so we could know more or less which information is more relevant or what we should focus or not for each chapter. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. But to be honest, I understand, and the project management
more or less for me to know how is the way that you ask the questions or something like that.
Right. We will have some time to do more exercises. I have to think about that because usually I do this block seminar where we do an entire day. So after we have basically only the organization topic left as the main topic. So organization structure in a company. And I usually do a full day where we do this an entire innovation cycle. So starting with vision, mission, business plan, and so on. We do that during the entire day. And as I said, the tests and the exercises done in a similar way. With project management, I think it's especially difficult because there's so much to do and so much to know about project management. And there's, as I said, what I've shown you is an excerpt from basically, well, it's not an excerpt from the material, but the people who have done this training went through this half-year, very, very intensive training. With lots of material and documentation and lots of exercises, and I can't replicate that here. And there are specific project management lectures, courses, and so on. So we can only touch on project management. What I did, therefore, I highlighted the yellow ones, the ones that I think are important. So everything that has been in yellow in this document, that is the pages that you should look at. But we've also done exercises. I want you to understand what a work breakdown structure is, what a project chart is, or the Gantt chart. I want you to understand what the objectives of project management are, and I want you to understand some basic background. But also, I've given you, or I'm giving you this material as reference material. I could shorten it to only like 10 slides or 15 slides or so. I will not ask all of these things that are in these slides, obviously, in the test, in the exam. This is not a project management course. But I want to give you or convey to you that project management is a really important tool, and you will be very, very likely in the situation that you will be project manager, and you will also be very likely in the situation that you will be part of project teams. And maybe this material is helpful to you just as a reference. And I said, the yellow highlighted ones, that are the ones that are relevant also to the exams and to the test with respect to project management, and the rest not so much. But we will have some time, and I obviously, honestly, I have to think about how we manage this in this remote class, because usually it's more interactive, even more interactive than it has been now. I've tried to replicate that as good as possible. I acknowledge that for project management, I don't really have good interactive setups or tools. Maybe I should have done some more research for that here. Have some interactive project management game or something. I don't have that. If you have any recommendations or any tips, I'll be happy to engage and help with that or do that. Yeah, I think before we do the test, before you will do the test, you will have some better understanding, and I will make sure you get this. This is usually done during this one-day block seminar, and I'll see how we replicate this for this remote class. Is that helpful as an answer?
Yes.
Okay.
Because I was just afraid to, because this, for example, this slide, I think it is very helpful and very useful informations. But I mean, I was just afraid to forget some specific point, and then in the XML, this point here, I didn't focus so much, so I don't know now in the exam how to answer.
I know.
This was just my point.
Lots of material, but this is what I said. I have highlighted, and you have these two presentations. This is another course from a university. Because there's so much about project management, and I'm again, there's no one simple or one truth. There's many truth about project management and many different aspects and facets and so on. So I wanted to give you two sets of material. I have highlighted the things that I found important. I wanted to give you background and some setting for the material. This is why I'm going to show you these slides as well. The yellow highlighted ones, this is basically what I think you should know and be able to replicate in an exam. Those highlighted slides, there's only a few in there, I think. Okay. So This is a class. You see here it takes 50 minutes, 110, 120, 150, 160 minutes. We won't take as long for this. Introduction to project management. Program versus project. So highlighted in yellow. Because that's another concept. We have talked about projects, but sometimes we also talk about programs, and a program is a set of related projects. For example given here, the Space Shuttle program. It consists of a number of projects. Or very often in the automotive industry, a new car, it's called a program. So the new whatever Audi, BMW, VW, the VW Golf, for example, that's what they call a program, because first of all, it's several models. So you have like different engines and so on. And also it's so big that it folds out into a number of projects that are all individually managed as projects. But if several projects come together to form a bigger super project, that is often called a program. So that's a concept that's covered here. We talked about what is a project. That's from a different perspective, but it hopefully leads to the same conclusion. Again, highlighted in yellow, a project is a series of complex connected activities with a common purpose. And here is some more criteria. It has to be unique. So something you do every day would not be a project. Something that is not complex would also be not a project. If it's straightforward, if, I don't know, painting a wall, for some people, could be a big project who have never done that. But for a person who knows to paint walls, painting another wall, they would not consider it a project. They would consider it a task because it's not very complex. It's connected activities. So you've shown that in your Gantt charts, that it involves several tasks and activities that are interrelated. It has one common goal or purpose, a target. It has a specific time and a budget. So it is a thing that has boundaries. It starts and it finishes, and it has a set of resources, budget, cost, and so on, people that are assigned that are all limited. And it involves risks. If it doesn't involve risk, it's also typically not a project, because complexity and uniqueness and newness, they all bring risk. So same definition that we had, just from a different worded differently, but hopefully the same content. And again, that's an idea that should stick. So if I ask you what is a project, you should be able to tell me what a project is and tell me some criteria. I won't, all the questions that I have in my tests, I never, you never have to have all the items in the right order and correct wording and so on. So I may ask 4 criteria that are important for projects, and any 4 that match are okay for me. And there's maybe 5 or 6 or 7, and if you give me 4, that's going to be sufficient. I'm not a person who likes to memorize text from a slide, and that's not what I expect you to. I expect you to be, to grasp the main concepts, to understand what we're talking about, and to be able to replicate that in exam on that same level. And something that I have not memorized, I would not expect you to know. So if I can't write it down, then I don't expect you to write it down. And I will not memorize all of these slides, obviously. So basic concepts. Here again, we have the project triangle: time, cost, and resource availability. Here, resource availability is another name for organization. So, and very often It's time, cost, and quality. And then we have scope and organization. These are the other two. And you see, there's no absolute truth. Another project management style course, and they put time, cost, and resources at the sides. And very often, here they put it at the sides. Sometimes they're put or the edges. Sometimes they put it at the corners. Whatever. There's no rule on how to draw that triangle. But again, also this course gives us the same perspectives: time, cost, people, organization, scope, and quality. Project planning. What business situation? What do you need to do? What will you do? How will you do it? How will you know you did it? Criteria. When has it been successful? How well did you do? Same thing. We discussed all that, and I think it's converging. The creeps. It's not in yellow. I'm not going to ask you name the 3 creeps in project management, because that would be nonsense. Because there's no absolute, truth about. If I ask a seasoned project manager what are the 3 creeps, he will tell me probably of things that creep, but they may not be the same here. But this is typical experiences. Therefore, I hope it's valuable. Scope creep. Changes to the project scope. Told you, watch the scope. Watch what the project needs to deliver in order to be successful. Think about the CRM thing. The people who actually use the CRM tool, and very often the scope changes throughout the project, and the expectation towards you as the project manager change. And that is dangerous, because if the scope changes, your entire setup, your entire plan loses its anchors. If the scope is, you started to build a house and then the scope is you should have built a boat, then obviously that is wrong. And that's not what's going to happen. It's not going to be a radical change. Rather, it's going to slowly alter, slowly change, and most of the time the scope gets bigger and bigger. So you do the CRM thing, you find out there's another department in another location that needs to be trained as well. So you say, well, okay, let's include training for them. Then somebody else says, well, we also have, the CRM is meant for products, but we also have some services in some areas, so we need to add this feature to the CRM. So the scope gets bigger and bigger, and you have to be aware of that. Hope creep. Project team members tend to hide when they are falling behind. This is where good strategy pays off, when you need to understand what each team member is doing and monitor what progress they made. What I told you, the project manager who got fired because he didn't communicate that they had a problem. In your role as a project manager, you have the same relationship with your team. Your team members don't tell you that they're not getting done, that they're having a problem, that they're behind schedule. You have no way to manage that risk on a project level. And people typically hope for the best. So if you're late with, learning, studying for an exam, you still say, and maybe you're one of these procrastinators like myself, who likes to postpone things to tomorrow and not do it today. Terrible problem. Might know that. So then you hope that tomorrow is going to be enough. And then tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, you hope again that the time is going to be sufficient. And so that happens, and you don't tell your project manager. And the project manager therefore needs to employ some tools, some monitoring tools, tracking tools, make sure the project manager knows what every person has to do. Look at the deadlines, communicate clear deadlines, and monitor the deadlines. Call Peter. If Peter hasn't delivered on his activity on Friday night, which was supposed to be Friday during the day, Friday night it has not arrived, call Peter. Ask him, Peter, why have you not given me your result? It was supposed to be there on Friday night or on Friday, and so on. Effort creep. Sometimes people are not effective, and sometimes the job is more complicated than anticipated. Effort creep occurs when a team member is putting in the hours but not writing off the task as the or by the expected deadline. So you have planned the task, and the person has said it's going to take me 40 hours. Jane Doe said it's going to take 40 hours, and Jane Doe writes down 40 hours, and you think, okay, Jane Doe, you've done 40 hours, you're going to be done. You ask Jane Doe, how far have you come during your 40 hours? And then Jane says, well, actually, I need another 40 because I haven't accomplished anything, or I have not accomplished, or it's more complicated. That is what's meant by effort creep. So don't track the actual work accomplished, but you track the time that somebody puts in, which is two totally different things. Therefore, it is good to have milestones. That these milestones typically have some checklists attached, so they're qualitative. You make sure that the results are actually there. It's not only the time has been put in, but the results are actually there. The slide doesn't have a yellow highlight either. This is kind of what we talked about. The Agile, you can start traditionally with a waterfall model. And you see how the things that we do in this class hopefully somehow converge. This is the waterfall model, traditional project management. And then you have various forms of iterative, incremental planning, adaptive planning, extreme planning. This comes from extreme software development. Used to be a fashionable keyword. Basically, it's an exaggeration of Agile. But everything that's made here, we include in our Agile management style, and that is incremental and iterative. And I've given you an example of this. And you see here, we have the traditional scope, plan, launch, monitor, and control done. So it's like the waterfall idea. Start with your plan or your scope, the requirements, and then you plan and you go down and down and down. In the end, you're done. That's the traditional idea, and obviously it doesn't work. So people have come up and said, well, there's probably some iteration that we have to do in between. We check, and then we have not reached our goal, so we have to go back and we do an iteration. So there's a loop in there. And Agile in this chart says, okay, we're not only iterating by doing corrective actions, we're actually going back to the planning stage. And as I told you, there's iterative and there's adaptive. What we discussed as Agile is both. It's iterative and adaptive because we do only a rough planning, the stage plan in the beginning, Etappenplan, and then we do little plans for each of the sprints, the sprint planning, and we have our backlog, and we can influence where the project goes at any time. So we have little planning cycles, and we keep revolving in these 2-week sprints. And you see how, because it's 2-week sprints, and because you have broken down the 2 weeks into tasks, and the team has to deliver results, for you as a project manager, that's actually a very nice way of managing or making sure there is no effort creep and no hope creep. Because after 2 weeks, the team has to present results, and they're tangible. This is what's nice about this Agile system. It is something that you can grasp, that is tangible, that you can actually take like a product, and you can look at it, you can test it, whatever. So if Jane Doe says, I've put in 40 hours, but I had no output, and you don't ask her, you will never know how far Jane Doe has come. But with this iterative 2-week sprint cycle, every 2 weeks you will have a very clear project status. This is the nice thing about the Agile management. And extreme, forget about extreme. The word doesn't exist anymore. Extreme programming and so on. It's part of this Agile collection of methods, and has not really. So extreme would be going back to the scope. I think it's also a bit theoretical to talk about extreme. So defining interim deliverables, again, that goes back to the agile management style. We have deliverables for each of the 2-week sprints. It also goes back to your milestones. We have deliverables for a milestone, which is like a small project closure. The part of the project, sub-project, is closed at a milestone, and you have to demonstrate what you have achieved. So that's the idea about milestones again. Make sure things don't creep. In yellow, marked in yellow because it's important, the scope of the project. Develop and gain approval of a general statement of the goal and business value of the project. So we've talked about managing scope. I don't know whether we talked about documenting that, but it makes obviously a lot of sense to put this down on a piece of paper and have it signed by senior management. Plan the project. You've done that as the exercise. Great homework, by the way. I'm really impressed. Somehow this virtual class thing helps that I never had such excellent homework done. Thank you very much for that. I'm really impressed with that. So you have done project planning. You know what I talk about. Launch the project, recruit the team, and establish team operating rules. In the other charts, we said kickoff. Same thing. You want to have a kickoff meeting. This is part of launching the project. Monitor and control the project. Respond to change requests and resolve problem situations to maintain project progress. Oh, remember the V model? We had change management at the right side of the V. Same thing. You always want to monitor the progress, see if the milestones are met. And project management has a regular and a cyclic characteristic. So typically you have a reporting of the project status every month, every 4 weeks. At when I worked with Belden, we had a system where we had monthly project reviews, and every project manager in R&D, this is product development, every project manager had to prepare a project report for his project. And we didn't have time, so this project status reporting meeting was a half day, was with a management team like R&D manager and different managers, and the project managers would come in, and every project manager had maybe 20 minutes or maybe half an hour to present his project and talk about the results and the next steps. So that group, I mean, it was a fixed set of managers, but they would also have the role of a steering group. So we had probably between 20 and 30 projects running in parallel at any time, and we had capacity for this project status meeting for maybe 8 projects to be presented during this one morning. So everybody had to prepare their reports. The reports were due, let's say, on a Friday, and then the project status meeting would be on a Wednesday or Thursday. So on Friday, everybody had to turn in their reports. The steering team, or the R&D manager in that case, would review all the reports and take out or filter reports either where we have a new risk or an unexpected risk, where there's some time constraint, something that goes wrong, that's critical, or a project that has not been discussed for a longer time. And so the team of the 20 to 30 projects would select 8 for presentation, and the project managers were then told by Monday night that they would have to present on Wednesday or Thursday, days later. So everybody had to basically reserve the time slot for presentation, but not everybody would actually present. But it was a random selection, not random, but based on criteria. But with respect to the project managers, they would not know if they had to present. So they had to prepare themselves as to be able to present. And then we talked about close of the project, close out, assure attainment of management requirements and issue deliverables. Gaining senior management approval of having met project requirements and so on. We talked about project closure. So I think that was actually a pretty good summary of what we discussed so far. Here's some more slides on methodology, on tools, on processes used for project management. For example, a gap analysis. To do a gap analysis, you start with what is the current situation and what is the situation tomorrow gonna be, and then see that you have some improvements to do, which is the gap. This statement, the project overview statement, is a tool that has different names: project brief, project letter, project whatever, something. It's basically a paper that clearly defines the targets, the scope of the project, the background information, why you should do the project, and basically the framework that the project set in. Here is an example. I'm not going to ask you this example, but you should have an idea that it's good to have a document that basically summarizes the key information about a project at one form, also in a standardized way. And here you see an example how this could be done. Problem and opportunity at the beginning. So that would be like current situation. We look at gap analysis. Then the goal, where do we want to be? The project objectives. So project goal is the overall goal. Project objectives, these are specific things, specific sub-targets that have to be met. Success criteria, how do we measure that we have reached those targets? For example, the total project cost is less than 4% of the current year office supply budget, whatever, some number criteria. And assumptions, risks, and obstacles to base your projects on. Okay. Has nothing yellow, is more detail about the same thing. We don't have to cover that. Project scoping meeting. Obviously, when you do such a document, you need to have a meeting where senior management takes place, where this is agreed and communicated. Project estimation and planning. Again, here we find our work breakdown structure. Eat the elephant in slices. Schedule activities in the work breakdown structure in a time-related plan. Again, what you did for your assignment at home. Estimate the time, cost, and resources required for the plan. In this little game that we played, you had to assign resources to the task. And it was a very simple game, obviously, but the idea that you have different resources with different talents and different constraints. And as a project manager, you want to utilize your resources in the best way to achieve your targets. That's about planning. Work breakdown structure. We've discussed a different picture here, but basically same thing. Then the goal is the project goal, and then you have functions, and then you can subdivide functions into sub-functions, and you can go, obviously you could do this on several hierarchical levels. I would recommend to you to stick with one hierarchy step, so have a top line, the structure of your project and then have individual tasks and not have subtasks and subtasks and so on. Unless the project is really big. It's not. This is a chart that visualizes a typical issue in a project, which is the duration. The planned duration is here. Okay, labor equals duration would be here. So that would be 9 days. But that's obviously not with the weekends. So we have weekends and holidays. So if you apply labor, 14 days actually work time, and you have to apply, you take the calendar and then you take Pentecost out and you take Himmelfahrt out and then you take all the weekends out and suddenly duration is here. That's the theoretical duration of the project. If everything goes wrong, but if everything goes right. But actually, I'm not gonna, actually what happens is that here and here and here, there is unplanned interruptions. So your actual duration is a lot longer because people don't stay engaged with the project at all time. And this is something you have to track as a project manager. Just a visualization, nothing to memorize. There's a lot of theory about estimation and how you estimate. I showed you, I think, this simple way of estimating in an agile team with a thumbs up. So somebody, no matter what you estimate, the 7 people or 6 or 5 or 8 stand in a circle. Somebody throws in a number and everybody says, yes, this is the number, or said, no, this is not the number. And whoever says, no, this is not the number, one of those shall make a different suggestion. And you will see, you have to try that. And it's hard to do that in Corona times, but very, very fast you come to a very good estimation, which includes the knowledge, so the rational side, but also the stomach side, the emotional side of all the people in the team. And these estimates are typically pretty good if it's something that can be overlooked by the team and estimated. So I don't want you to obviously know other estimation techniques. We have not discussed those, and there's nothing yellow in here. Here comes another yellow chart. Again, chart, I want you to understand what you did as an assignment, that you are able to do that, replicate that, understand that. It's core and basic for project management. Task dependency. Here we see some typical dependencies. The most common dependency is when A finishes, B may start. So A, the finishing of A is a prerequisite to B. In the project management tool, you can also do some other dependencies, but for most of them, it's hard to think of examples because they don't really come up in standard R&D projects. But for example, here, when A finishes, B may finish. So that would be, B would be change management and A would be the project. So before the project A has not finished, I can't finish the change management or the controlling process. That would be a dependency. So you need to keep B running until A has terminated. Or B may only start after A has been started, but A does not have to be finished. And when A starts, B may finish. That is like you have 2 people, and one person has to be on watch. So before B may finish, before B may leave his watch, A has to start going on the watch. So it's either A or B that's constantly running. So you see that there is examples where these dependencies are useful, makes sense. You can use your preferred Gantt chart project management tool. They usually, I have not checked with Project Libre, but they usually can do all of these relationships. Project team, we will look at the structure. When we talk about organization structure, we will also look at the project team structure. Project kickoff, we discussed that. Nothing more to say about it. We talked about that one chart about controls, all the things that have to be tracked, quality, time, cost, and so on. So project management is basically, it's a planning and then it's a checking. It's this plan, do, check, act cycle all of the time. So controlling means the German word for controlling is not Kontrolle. Control means Steuerung. And monitoring means Überwachung. And in order to control the project, ein Projekt zu steuern, you need to monitor its progress. And you need to detect variance from plan, and you need to take corrective actions. So it's measuring and it's taking corrective action to compensate for the gaps. We talked about project reports, so you need to have some kind of progress reporting system. So, as I said, this monthly progress or project status report, and typically it's like you could use a traffic light system, red, yellow, green. Green means everything is okay. I think I showed you this one chart where they have this whiteboard with magnets on the wall, where all the projects in the R&D department are shown. It was part of a lean presentation. And so the people put magnets, and when they put a green magnet means I'm working and everything is okay. When they put a yellow magnet means I have issues, but I think I'm still on top. I have a way out. I can manage those. Red means I'm lost. I have a problem. I need help. So that is a progress reporting system, a very simple one with magnets on a whiteboard, a very tangible one, part of the lean and the agile processes to make these very simple with boards and not with complicated forms and computer tools and software, but very tangible on the wall. But something needs to be established, obviously. Here is this traffic light system. Project according to plan, has a problem, is failing, intervention required. What I just told. In yellow, because that is something to take home for you. Variances. Variances are the difference between actual events and the project plan. Also here, only the top lines are yellow. I don't want you to memorize what's here, obviously. You don't have to. Maybe interesting and good for reference. But what a variance is, the difference between the actuals and the plans. This is for characteristic thing a project manager has to look for. Displaying the status, that has to do again with the lean methodology. There is, for example, a milestone trend chart where you see if milestones are at the planned date or if they slip at a later date. That is a good way to visualize project performance. I can give an example of such a chart here. Summary, Manage the creeps, project overview statement, work breakdown structure, task and duration estimates, manage resources, people, time, and so on. Communicate the status. That was this 160-minute course. Very, very, very compressed, and a few yellow headlines. Why don't you go through these two? Why don't you go through these two documents and look at the yellow headlines and try to, with everything that you heard today, which was a lot, and I'm sorry for talking too much and not giving you enough room for your own agility. But why don't you try to wrap this up and write your own little project management excerpt or guide for yourself? Maybe a 2-page thing or a 3-page thing. Go through, look at the yellow headlines and try to put it in some kind of a structure that you're comfortable with. I would recommend that to you. That would also be and will also be your only homework. You don't have to do it for me, so you don't have to turn it in or anything. But if you want, if you write something, you can do that as a team. Make your own little project management guide. So project management for dummies, something that you would, in an elevator talk, in a 5-minute elevator ride or a 10-minute phone conversation, what would you convey? However you want to do that. I'd be very interested in looking at those. And so if I get any documentation, I'll put it in as a task so you can turn in your results if you want. We will discuss next time. And maybe if you're wanting and willing to share with others, that could actually be of value, but that's going to be up to you then. That's it for today. Any questions or comments? Feedback, whatever. Vitor is typing. Was everything clear in a great lecture? No, it wasn't. It was too much frontal. I'm sorry. But there's too much stuff. I don't have a better way, and the document should be about the last 2 lectures. Yes. And if you take these two documents, look at the yellow highlighted and just make an excerpt. What does project management mean for you? What have you taken out? Very, very brief. Thank you so much for bearing with me. Could have imagined a lot of people have already left. And maybe you left your computer. I don't see that. But that's okay. You've said that the yellow mark points are important for our exam preparation. Does this include the subpoints? Everything that is marked in yellow. I think I marked the subpoints. So the slides that we had here, slides that we had here, I really think only the yellow lines, not everything that is on a slide with some yellow, but actually just the yellow lines are important. Here, let's take that. So not everything that is here, but what is in yellow, that for me was an excerpt. I went through the document. I think it was in last year's class. They also said, well, this is so much material and so much stuff. And what is it? What is the quintessential bottom line of that? And so I said, okay, I'll go through and I just mark what I think is important to me as a summary. And this is highlighted in yellow. And if you go through and do that and write it down for your own benefit, I think you'll have a good summary and you'll have a very good grasp of project management. And it's worth it. Project management is great, and it's a topic that's going to probably keep you busy for all of your professional career. Thank you so much. You have a great weekend. Next Friday, we'll have lecture. Next Thursday is a holiday, Himmelfahrt. Next Friday, we will have lecture because that is on the original university schedule, but the week after next week. So that is Friday the 29th or something, or the 28th, I don't know. That's going to be Pentecost, the Pentecost weekend, Pfingstwochenende. There's no lecture on that Friday. Okay. Thank you very much. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the hopefully bad weather, hopefully good weather. And thank you so much for your attention. Bye-bye.